Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're going deep on something that might sound a little intimidating: credit charge-offs. But fear not, dear listeners. We're here to demystify it all. We've got our research ready, notes prepped, ready to break it down.
Exactly. We'll unpack it so you know exactly what's what.
All right, so first things first, what exactly is a charge-off? It's more than just missing a couple of payments, right?
Right. Think of it this way. A lender, like a credit card company, they're waiting for you to pay back what you owe, right?
Mm-hmm.
But after 180 days, that's about half a year of missed payments, they might start thinking, okay, we might not see this money again. And that's when they might charge it off.
Charge it off. So they basically just give up.
Well, kinda. They'll write it off as a loss on their books, for accounting purposes.
Okay, but wait. If they've given up on getting the money back, does that mean I don't owe it anymore?
That's where it gets a little tricky. See, the lender might have accepted it as a loss, but you, the borrower, you're still on the hook for that debt. They can even sell that debt to a collection agency.
Oh, so it's not just that it goes away.
Nope. The original lender might move on, but you're still dealing with the consequences.
And I'm guessing those consequences aren't fun.
You guessed it. One of the biggest ones. The impact on your credit score. Think of your credit score like a grade that tells lenders how responsible you are with money, a charge-off. Well, that's like getting a big fat F on your report card.
Ouch, that's gonna hurt. But why does a charge-off hit your score that hard? Is it just because, I missed some payments?
It's more than just missing payments. It's the message it sends. It tells future lenders, hey, this person didn't just miss payments. They basically just walked away from the whole debt. That makes you seem like a pretty risky borrower.
So we're not talking like a little dip in my score, right? We're talking, what, like a huge drop?
You're looking at a significant drop, yeah. Potentially 100 points or more, even. Depends on your overall credit history.
100 points. That's massive. And how long does this F stay on my record?
Here's the kicker. It stays on your credit report for 7 years.
7 years. So let's say, hypothetically, I do have a charge-off lurking on my credit report. Is there any way to fix it?
But not impossible. The best approach, though, it really depends. It depends on whether the debt's still with the original lender or if it got sold off to a collection agency.
Okay, so different paths for different situations.
Right. So say it's still with the original lender, you just might be able to negotiate a settlement, You pay a portion of what you owe, and they agree to remove the charge-off.
So there's a chance I could get it wiped clean if I can work it out with the original lender.
There's a possibility, but don't get your hopes up too high. These agreements, they're pretty uncommon.
Right. But worth a shot.
Definitely worth a try. But then, if the debt's been sold to collections, well, things get a bit more complicated. Paying the collection agency, it won't erase the charge-off itself, but it does change its status to paid, which can look a little better, on your credit report.
Okay, so it's not perfect, but at least it shows I've taken care of it.
Exactly. Shows you've taken responsibility. Right. Oh, and another thing, always check your credit report carefully. If you see any mistakes, like a wrong amount, or even an account that's not yours, you have the right to dispute it with the credit bureaus.
So sometimes it's just an error, and you can get it removed.
That's right. If the dispute is successful, they might remove the charge-off entirely.
So it really pays to be proactive and check your credit report.
Absolutely. Can't stress that enough.
Yeah.
Now, we've talked about fixing a charge-off, but let's be real. Avoiding one in the first place sounds a lot better, doesn't it?
Definitely less stressful.
Way less stressful. And you know what the golden rule of prevention is? Don't ignore your debts. Ever. If you're struggling to make those payments, talk to your lender. Communication is key.
So don't just bury your head in the sand.
Exactly. Be upfront. Be proactive. Now, let's say you are facing some financial difficulties. What can you actually do? Well, you could try setting up a payment plan with your lender. It shows you're committed to paying back what you owe. Some lenders even have these hardship programs, specifically designed to help borrowers who are going through tough times.
Like a safety net.
Yeah, exactly. And even if you can't make a payment right now, keeping those lines of communication open, explaining your situation, can sometimes be enough to prevent things from escalating to a charge-off.
That makes sense. It's always better to face the problem head-on.
Definitely. Address it, don't avoid it. Now, I know we've covered a lot about charge-offs, what they are, the impact, ways to fix them, ways to avoid them.
A lot of ground covered.
But there's always more to learn, right? Charge-offs, they aren't always a black and white situation. There are different circumstances, different reasons why a charge-off might happen, and understanding those nuances, well, that can be really helpful.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Definitely need to hear more about these nuances.
We'll dive into all of that right after this break.
All right, so we're back and ready to go even deeper on these charge-off nuances.
You got it. Remember how we said a charge-off, it's not always so black and white? Well, the reasons behind it, those can make a big difference.
So it's not just if it happens, but why it happens.
Exactly. Like, let's say someone, they lose their job, totally unexpected, or maybe they get slammed with a ton of medical bills. Well, they might fall behind on payments, and that could lead to a charge-off. But in that case, it's like a genuine hardship, not necessarily a reflection of, their character or anything.
Yeah, life happens, unfortunately. Throws you a curveball.
Totally. But then you've got those cases where maybe the charge-off is more because of, I don't know, carelessness or just bad financial choices. Like maybe someone overspends, misses payments, or they just prioritize other expenses, over their debt.
So it becomes more of a pattern of behavior.
Right. And that's important, see, because lenders, they look at the whole picture. A charge-off because of a job loss, that might be viewed differently than one that happened because someone just consistently ignored their bills.
So even though it's always a negative mark, the context matters. Like a lender might be more understanding if it was just, bad luck.
That's right. And that's why it's so important to communicate with your lender if you're having trouble making those payments, explaining your situation. It shows you're taking responsibility and that you're willing to find a solution.
So communication is key, as always. Now, we've talked about that credit score impact, but are there other consequences we haven't touched on yet besides the score itself?
Oh, yeah. Besides the hit to your score, there's the very real chance of, debt collectors. Remember, the debt doesn't magically disappear. It can be sold to a collection agency, and that's when you start getting those phone calls, the letters demanding payment.
Sounds stressful.
It can be. And in some cases, they might even sue you to try to recover that debt.
So it's more than just a financial burden, it's an emotional one, too.
Absolutely. Financial stress, it impacts everything. It's important to be proactive, seek help when you need it to avoid getting into these situations in the first place.
Okay, so let's talk about some myths. I've heard people say, once a debt gets charged off, you don't actually owe the money anymore. Is that true?
Oh, that's a dangerous one. That's just not how it works. A charge-off, it's really an accounting term. It means the lender's given up on collecting directly, but that doesn't erase your responsibility. You still owe it. A collection agency could still come knocking.
So that myth is busted, officially. Any other misconceptions we should clear up while we're at it?
There's this idea that a charge-off equals an automatic lawsuit. While, collection agencies can sue, it's not always their first move. They'd often rather try to settle, through negotiations or payment plans.
So it's not a guarantee, but it's still a possibility.
Exactly. Whether or not you get sued, it depends on a lot of things. The amount of debt, how old the debt is, even the laws in your state.
Sounds like there's a lot of nuance to this whole charge-off thing.
Definitely. That's why it's so important to be informed and to get professional advice if you're dealing with one or, any other debt-related issues.
Good advice. Now, you mentioned different scenarios can lead to a charge-off. We talked about, genuine hardship versus negligence, but are there any other situations that can trigger one?
Yeah, actually, one that's often overlooked, identity theft. Imagine someone opens a credit card in your name, racks up all this debt. You could end up with a charge-off, even though you had absolutely nothing to do with it.
Oh, wow. So it could happen through no fault of your own.
It can, yeah.
Yeah.
And that's another reason why checking your credit report regularly is crucial. If you spot anything fishy, report it right away.
So vigilance is key. Anything else? Other unusual situations, I mean.
Well, sometimes a charge-off can happen just because of a clerical error, mistake, The lender might accidentally charge off an account that's actually in good standing.
So it's not always a reflection of the borrower.
Nope. And that just reinforces the importance of checking your credit report carefully and disputing any inaccuracies you find.
This is all really eye-opening. We've covered a lot about charge-offs, the causes, consequences, those myths. But I'm really eager to get to some practical advice. Like, what do you do if it happens to you?
Absolutely. Let's shift gears and get into those actionable steps.
Okay, so we're back. And the big question now is, what do you actually do if you're facing a charge-off? What are the steps?
It can feel pretty overwhelming, that's for sure. But the first thing is simple. Gather all your documents. Your loan agreement, the original one, any communication you've had with the lender, emails, letters, all that, and a copy of your credit report, of course.
Okay, so it's all about getting organized.
Exactly. Got to see the whole picture, right? Once you've got all that together, you need to figure out who actually owns the debt now. Is it still the original lender, or has it been passed off to a collection agency? That's going to determine what you do next.
Okay, so let's say it's still with the original lender. What then? What should I do?
Well, it's always worth trying to negotiate. You know, explain your situation, be honest about it, acknowledge the debt, and say, hey, I want to repay this. Some lenders, they're willing to work with you, especially if you show them you're serious about making things right.
So even after a charge-off, you can still try to reason with the original lender.
Absolutely worth a shot. But if the debt's already been sold to a collection agency, well, things get a little trickier. Collection agencies, they have a reputation,
Yeah.
They can be more aggressive, less flexible.
Yeah, that sounds a little intimidating.
It can be. But listen, first and foremost, know your rights. There's a law, the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act, the FDCPA. It's there to protect you from shady practices, It limits what collection agencies can do, what they can say. So familiarize yourself with it, and don't be afraid to push back if you think they're crossing a line.
So knowledge is power.
Absolutely. And here's another tip. Always, always communicate in writing. It creates a paper trail, documentation. Keep copies of everything. And if you have a phone conversation, jot down the date, time, who you spoke to, all the details.
Okay, so document everything.
Yeah. And don't just take their word for it over the phone.
Yeah.
Get everything in writing before you make any payments, before you agree to anything. Remember, you're in a tough spot, so protect yourself.
That's good advice. Now, what if I'm just feeling totally lost? Like, I have no idea where to even start.
It's okay. It's a lot to handle. Don't be afraid to reach out for help. There are credit counselors, debt relief attorneys. They can guide you through the process, advocate for you, help you understand your options.
So you don't have to go it alone.
Not at all.
Well,
Now, we've talked a lot about what to do after a charge-off, but let's talk prevention. Any advice on how to stay ahead of the game?
yeah, let's avoid this whole mess if we can.
Right. Prevention is key. And it all starts with a budget. A realistic budget that you actually stick to. It helps you track your money, where it's going, so you can see where to cut back, make sure you're covering those debts.
Okay, budgeting 101. What else, Sing?
Check your credit report regularly. It lets you catch any errors, anything suspicious early on before it blows up into a bigger problem.
We've mentioned credit reports a few times now. Can you remind us, how do we actually access those?
Sure. So you can get a free copy of your credit report from each of the 3 big credit bureaus, Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion once a year. Go to annualcreditreport.com. It's a great resource.
So we've got budgeting, credit monitoring, anything else?
Oh, absolutely. Set up payment reminders, or even use autopay. Those missed payments just from forgetting, they can really sneak up on you. But honestly, the most important tip, the one I can't stress enough, is this. Talk to your lenders. If you're struggling, don't wait. Reach out to them as soon as possible. You'd be surprised how often they're willing to work with you, maybe create a payment plan, explore other options.
So it always comes back to communication.
It really does. At the end of the day, knowledge is power, right? The more you know about credit, about debt, about your rights, the better you'll be able to handle these challenges and make good decisions.
Well, this has been an incredibly informative deep dive into the world of credit charge-offs. Any final thoughts for our listeners before we wrap up?
Just remember this. Financial setbacks, they happen. They happen to a lot of us. They don't define you. What matters is what you do next, how you learn, how you bounce back. There are resources out there. You don't have to go through this alone.
That's really important to remember.
It is. And every financial decision you make, every challenge you face, it's a chance to learn and grow. Keep learning about personal finance, and don't hesitate to ask for help when you need it.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive into credit and charge-offs. It's been a pleasure.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
And to all our listeners, thanks for tuning in to The Deep Dive. Until next time, stay curious and keep learning.
If this podcast helped you, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Your support helps us keep making these videos. Thanks for watching.